It's fall, but we still have some delicious summer fruit out. Let's use them up in this recipe. Bienvenue, welcome in. I'm Miss K, and today we're making a peaches and cream tart. We'll start with our puff pastry. You'll need some flour. It's 125 grams, a little more than a cup. And then we need a good quality butter. I'm using an unsalted European style butter. You need 140 grams, which is about 10 tablespoons. Now, if you're not feeling this ambitious, you can go ahead and use a store-bought crust. It won't make a lot of difference in the end, but if you want to make it all from scratch, that's what I'm doing here. So this is not a true puff pastry. I'm making what's called a rough puff or a blitz puff pastry. So basically, we're not going to have all the laminations in the dough. You're going to get some really cold butter and cut it into little cubes like I'm doing here. You want to use a high-fat butter. That's why I'm using the European variety. It has a higher fat than our American butter. And it just makes for a nicer pastry. If you can't find an unsalted European butter and you're using salted, please omit the salt from the recipe. I like using unsalted butter because it gives me more control over the end product in my recipe. So I can control how much salt goes in and ultimately control the final taste of the product. So I didn't use the entire block, as you can see here. So I'll wrap that up and save it for later. And then I used unsalted, so we're adding a little bit of salt. Just a 1/4 teaspoon of fine salt. If you have kosher salt, that's going to be double the amount. And then I'm going to use my pastry blender to blend in this butter. If you don't have one of these, you can use a table knife to chop the butter in. That works well. You can use one in each hand. You can also use your fingers. I don't like to do that because you want this butter cold and hands are warm, so they tend to melt the butter. What we're aiming for here is mostly pea-sized pieces of butter. You're not going to get it completely even, and that's okay. So while I give my arms a workout, why don't you give your finger a workout and go ahead and like this video down below and subscribe if you haven't done so already. If your butter gets stuck like mine, just use a butter knife and push it out. And like I said, you can just chop it like this too. That works as well. Not bad. If you think about this ahead of time, you can chill your flour as well, and that'll help keep things at a good temperature. But I just used room temperature because I thought I had frozen puff pastry, and I don't, but I still wanted to make this. See what I do for you guys. See, I'm going out of my way to do it all from scratch. And I'll put the links to the original recipes down below in the description. And if you wanted to, you could do this step directly on your counter. I like to keep it in a bowl. It kind of helps me keep it cleaner. But when it gets about like this, we're going to dump it on the counter anyway. And add some ice cold water. Place it on the bench, and we're going to make a well in the middle. And if you see any huge pieces of butter like I have here, you can just go ahead and chop them and get them pea-sized. Again, we're not looking for perfection here. And then we're going to pour the ice cold water right in the middle, and then we're going to stir this together using our hands. Watch. Just so you know, my weight measurements are way more accurate than the volumetric ones, but if you've got to use volume, then go ahead and do it. So all we're trying to do here is bring this together into a cohesive dough, and you might have to add a little bit more water. That's fine. And I'm just using the tips of my fingers because, again, we don't want to melt that butter. We just want it to get held together by that flour and water mixture. When it starts to resemble a shaggy mass like this that stays together, we're going to move on to using our rolling pin, and we're going to roll this baby out. Put a little bit more flour on top so it doesn't stick to your rolling pin, and use that bench scraper to bring it back together if you have to, and gently roll it out. I know you're thinking, Kay, this does not look like anything that's going to make a pie crust, but I promise it will come together. Just be patient, don't rush it. Gather the edges back in if you have to, and then we're going to fold it in a letter fold. That's a trifold. You can use a bench scraper, like I have here, to fold it over onto itself. Turn it 90 degrees, and then we're going to roll it again. And we're going to repeat this process 2 or 3 more times. You'll know when your dough's ready. Try to add as little flour as possible to keep it from sticking. That's all we're trying to do here. We've already got plenty of flour in that dough. Oh, pardon me. Sorry, I bumped you. Come back over here. If you get too much flour on here, you can use a pastry brush to kind of dust it off. Now when your dough looks like this, we're just going to wrap it up and chill it for at least 30 minutes. So you have to do a little bit of planning ahead. Again, if you don't want to do this, you can use a frozen puff pastry. It'll work just fine. And while this baby chills, we'll work on our tart filling. We're going to have 2 parts to this filling, the cream and the peaches, or you can use nectarines if you decide to, or a mixture of both. So here I'm using creme fraiche. I make my own creme fraiche, and if y'all are interested in that, let me know in the comments below, and I'll make you a video showing you how I do that. But if you don't have creme fraiche and you don't want to purchase it, you can just use regular cream. But you can see this is a little bit thicker than heavy cream would be. That's the texture of it. It's not quite as thick as sour cream. To the cream, we're going to add 2 large eggs, and then a heaping tablespoon, or about 14 grams, of all-purpose flour, and then a pinch of salt, and a little splash of vanilla extract. And then we're going to use a whisk and blend this together before we add the sugar. You know, maybe I should have used a larger measuring cup if I didn't want to mix like this, but it is what it is. So when it's all nice and homogeneous like this, I'll go ahead and add my sugar. I'm using 70 grams, which is a bit more than 1/3 of a cup of sugar. You might want to add more or less depending on how sweet your fruit is. You decide, it's your tart. Set that in the refrigerator, and we're going to preheat our oven to 210 degrees Celsius, which is about 410 Fahrenheit. So you can just set your oven on 400. It'll be fine. And we're going to roll out this dough to the shape of our tart pan. Is it a pan or is it a tin? I don't know. But the tart dough needs to fit. And before we add the filling to this, we're going to blind bake it. That's why I wanted you to go ahead and have your oven hot. And to roll this, all I'm doing is picking it up, turning it halfway, and rotating it. Okay, turn it over and rotate it. And I know I'm not doing a great job of making something round out of this square, but it's okay. It'll come together, I promise. I guess I like to break rules in the kitchen. I'm sure there's more efficient ways to do this, but I roll it out and then put my pie dish on top of it to see if it's big enough. And then I fold it into the quarters and then set it into the pan. So you want to lay this across the top and then go around and press it in with your hand here. And I probably should have rolled this a little bit thinner because it didn't make it all the way to the edges. But remember me, I like to break rules, so let me show you how I fix that. I got my handy dandy kitchen shears and I'm trimming the edges. And you might want to leave a little bit of overhang because I ended up having my pie crust shrink a little bit too much. And in those places where it wasn't big enough, I just take a piece of that excess dough and press it in. Will it work? Will it work? I don't know. I mean, it works on regular pie dough. It ended up being okay, but you probably just want to leave a little bit of overhang because I had quite a lot of shrinkage. After you get your dough situated, you do want to go in with a fork and dock your dough. That's just pressing holes, and you just go straight down and go all around. And maybe it would have helped if I put a piece of parchment with some pie beads here. That might have helped with the shrinkage, because you can see it shrunk quite a bit. Oh no! Uh-oh! But the bottom looks great, and it's nice and puffy, so I'm happy with it. Let's move on to the next step. So we're going to need some stone fruit. You can use peaches or nectarines or a combination, but you're going to need to peel them and slice them so that we can arrange them into the tart pan. I also have a packet of vanilla sugar, which if you don't have, you can use a nice sparkling sugar on the top to finish your tart, or you can omit it altogether. Now I'm going to arrange the peaches in concentric circles around the tart. Why do I do this? Because it's pretty. No other reason. If you don't want to do this and you just want to lay your peaches out, you can do that. But I just go around in a ring and fill in the gaps with the little tiny pieces where I can. Ta-da! Now we're going to add our cream. Just pour this across the top. I give it a little stir because remember we've let it sit in the refrigerator. And just pour it around your fruit. And then we're going to put this into our oven that we've already preheated at 210 degrees Celsius, 410 degrees Fahrenheit. And we're going to bake it until it's set. It might be 15 minutes. It might be 20. Depends on your oven. Just keep an eye on it. Before we pop it in the oven, I am going to sprinkle on that vanilla sugar that I showed you earlier. If you don't have it, you can just use the regular sugar, or you can use a coarse green sugar or sparkling sugar, or you can omit the sugar altogether. I mean, we've already put some in here, and the peaches are very sweet this year. It just gives it a something little extra. And here we have it, our final product, La Tarte aux Pêches, our peaches and cream tart. And you can see it's set in the middle. It's not liquid anymore. And we're going to let this cool before we serve it. Now you can serve it at room temperature. I prefer it chilled in the refrigerator. But you can see it's set. A little bit of cream coming out. A little bit of juice from the peaches. And that's normal. So here it is the next day. I've let it chill. And we're going to cut a slice and see what it looks like. You gotta cut through the fruit and the crust. So you can see here, it's still creamy, but it's set. And you can bite into it and you can see that puff pastry puffed up nicely there. Delicious. Light-ish summer dessert. Give it a try. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching and check out this other video that YouTube picked out for you. Have a great day. Au revoir. Bon appétit.